Hi everyone. My name is Rabbi Rachel Davidson. I'm one of the rabbis here at Lionsgate, and I work with Rabbi Rena Grossman. I wanted to bring to all of you a little bit of a class on counting the Omer. So counting the Omer, in short, in brief, is counting 49 days in between Passover and Shavuot. It's a commandment, a mitzvah, and you just say a short blessing, and then you say, today is the, for example, 40th day of the Omer, the 40th day after Passover before Shavuot. We'll go a bit more in depth about what that means, though, and we'll explore some of the historical connotations that counting the Omer has had. We'll look at the different meanings that counting the Omer has held for people. So I want to begin by saying the blessing for Torah study, and you're welcome to say the blessing with me. It's the same as the blessing for lighting candles, except instead of saying Lahadlik ner shel Shabbat, we'll say La'asok b'divrei Torah. So, Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech ha'olam asher kidshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah. So I want to begin just by telling you where we're going to go. So first we're going to talk about sources from the Tanakh, and then we're going to talk a little bit about what this all has to do with Shavuot. Then we'll talk a little bit about what it meant for people who were writing the Talmud. And finally, we'll talk about counting the Omer and the Kabbalists, the Jewish mystics. So I want to begin with our original source text from the Tanakh. This is from Vayikra, the book of Leviticus, chapter 23, verses 15 through 17. And I'll read it in Hebrew first and then in English. Usfartem lachem mimacharat hashabat miyom haviachem et Omer hatnufa sheva shabbatot tmimot tihiena ad mimacharat hashabat hashvi'it tisperu chamishim yom v'hikravtem mincha chadasha lashem mimoshvotechem taviu lachem tnufa shtaim shnei esronim solet tihiena chametz te'afena bikurim lashem. And from the day on which you bring the sheaf of elevation offering, the day after the Sabbath, you shall count off 7 weeks. They must be complete. You must count until the day after the 7th week. 50 days, then you shall bring an offering of new grain to God. You shall bring from your settlements 2 loaves of bread as an elevation offering. Each shall be made of 2/10 of a measure of choice flour, baked after leavening as first fruits to God. So in the modern period, we're very used to thinking about Pesach as the holiday that commemorates leaving Egypt, the exodus from Egypt. And Shavuot is the holiday that commemorates when the Jews received the Torah. And so we use that as a day to celebrate the Torah in general. For our Israelite ancestors, however, Passover and Shavuot were primarily agricultural festivals. So Passover was when you started harvesting grain, and Shavuot marked the end of the grain harvest. And at both of those holidays, you would bring a tithe, you would bring a portion of your grain up to the temple as a sacrifice to God. So when you counted these 49 days in between Passover to Shavuot, Shavuot is the 50th day, it was counting off an agricultural period, the season of the grain harvest. And during that time period, every day, you would take an omer of grain, an omer is a measurement of sheaves of grain, and set it aside to bring as a sacrifice to the temple on the 50th day, Shavuot. So the reason we say counting the Omer is because originally people were counting out sheaves of wheat that they would bring to the temple. Now today, I don't know about you, but I am not a farmer. Most people I know are not farmers. And so I am not actually counting out sheaves of wheat, but I still count each day in between Passover to Shavuot. And you start on the second night of Passover. So when you would be doing a second Seder is when you count the first night of the Omer. So the question then lies, after the destruction of the temple, right, which happened in the 1st century CE, in specifically 70 CE, why are people continuing to count the Omer? Why would you keep counting when there's no temple to bring your sheaves of wheat to? Fair question. I think Rambam brings in a very interesting idea here. It first originates in Midrash, which is the classical commentary from the rabbinic period on the Tanakh and the Torah. So in Midrash Rabbah, it says, when the children of Israel left Egypt, they were told by Moses that 49 days after the Exodus, they would be given the Torah. The people were so excited at liberation, spiritual liberation, following the physical liberation from Egypt, that they kept account of every day that ended with the Torah being given at the foot of Mount Sinai. So what these classical rabbis are saying is that the counting of the Omer is not just counting the harvest, but it's really counting the days from physical liberation from bondage all the way to spiritual liberation when the children of Israel received the Torah. So while originally this may have been about counting your grains of wheat, it now is also commemorating the days in between physical freedom to spiritual freedom, Passover to Shavuot, not just these harvest holidays, but also these spiritual holidays. Maimonides is going to explain this further. V'Shavuot hu yom matan Torah, v'lehigdil hayom hahu yimenu hayamim min hamoed harishon elav. Kemo shematnin bo hane'eman Shavuot vav shehu moneh hayom v'gam hashaot. V'zot hi sibat sfirat ha'omer miyom tzetem mimitzrayim ad yom matan Torah, shehu haya hakoneh v'hachit chalit beyatzatem. The Feast of Weeks is the anniversary of the revelation on Mount Sinai. In order to raise the importance of this day, we count the days that pass since the preceding festival, just as one who expects his most intimate friend on a certain day counts the days and even the hours. This is the reason why we count the days that pass since the offering of the Omer, between the anniversary of our departure from Egypt and the anniversary of the law-giving. This was the aim and the object of the Exodus from Egypt. So Maimonides, a medieval philosopher, perhaps the greatest medieval philosopher from the Jewish tradition, is writing here in Moreh Nevuchim, the Guide to the Perplexed, and he's using this midrash. So the midrash tells us that the children of Israel were counting down the days until they received the Torah. Maimonides says that this is like when you're about to see a friend who you haven't seen in a very long time, and you're counting down the days and even the hours until you see that friend. So for Maimonides, counting the Omer is our way of spiritually recreating this feeling of waiting to see a dear friend. So we're able to be in contact with the Torah regularly. We can pull a book off our bookshelves and look at the Torah. But still, every year, we spiritually recreate this feeling of the anticipation of getting the Torah for the very first time. And we experience it like a person waiting for a dear friend who they haven't seen in a very long time. So this Midrash and the Rambam are portraying the Omer as a time of joyful anticipation, a time when we're excitedly waiting for Shavuot to come, were excited about receiving the Torah and receiving that wisdom and learning. Now, the story gets a little bit more complex when we look at Yevamot. So Yevamot is one of the tractates of the Talmud. This is specifically from page 62b. And this is going to tell us a story about how the Omer was actually a time of great sadness. So again, I'm going to read the Hebrew and then I'll read the English. Amru, 12,000 zugim talmidim hayu lo l'Rabbi Akiva, migavat ad Antiparas. V'kulan metu beperek echad, mipnei shelo nahagu kevod ze leze, v'haya ha'olam shamam, ad sheba Rabbi Akiva etzel rabotenu shebadarom. V'shana lahem Rabbi Meir v'Rabbi Yehuda v'Rabbi Yossi v'Rabbi Shimon v'Rabbi Elazar ben Shamua. V'hem ha'am midu Torah ota sha'a, tanu kulam metu mepesach v'ad atzeret. So it says that our rabbis taught that Rabbi Akiva had 12,000 pairs of students who lived from Gevat to Antipatris in Judea. And all of these students died in one time period because they did not treat each other with respect. And the world was desolate until Rabbi Akiva came to our rabbis in the south and taught Torah to them. These rabbis were Rabbi Meir, Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Shimon, and Rabbi Elazar ben Shamua. And these are the people who upheld the study of Torah at that time. So in this midrash, we learn, and then it goes on to say that this was the time period that they all died in was Mi-Pesach v'ad Atzeret, from Pesach to Shavuot. So from this story, this piece of Agadah, this legend, we learn that the Omer is also a time that remembers great sadness. It remembers a time of a plague. A little bit later in the Talmud, it says that what killed Rabbi Akiva's students was diphtheria, an ancient plague. Now, I don't know about you, but when I read this story, I think about how we today are going through a modern plague, it seems like. Now, personally, I do not believe that our plague is happening because people didn't treat each other with enough respect. In the ancient period, they believed that our emotions and our intentions really impacted the physical world. And so we have lots of stories of rabbis not treating each other with enough respect and the dangerous consequences that happen because of that. So I don't believe that this plague that we're going through, that coronavirus, is happening because of disrespect. But I do believe that there's actions that human beings could have taken to take better care of each other, especially people in power could have done certain things differently, that would have helped this virus from being so deadly. And at the same time, I believed that when we don't treat each other with enough respect, that when we don't see the human dignity in every person in front of us, there are terrible, sad consequences. So it feels especially resonant to me this year to read about a plague that happened during the Omer and see this modern virus that's sweeping across the world during the Omer. So personally, I find it interesting to think about how the Omer is a time of both great joy and also at the time great sadness. So we're joyful because we're anticipating the reception of the Torah, but we're also sad, we're remembering this plague. And if we go a bit further, we learn from the Shulchan Aruch certain laws that you're supposed to do during counting the Omer in commemoration of Rabbi Akiva's students who all died. So traditionally, you wouldn't get married, you wouldn't have any big celebrations, and you wouldn't cut your hair, which is traditionally a sign of mourning. I don't know about you, for most of us, we're not cutting our hair because all of the hairdressers are closed. But traditional Jews, Orthodox Jews, and traditional Jews in general wouldn't cut their hair during this time period no matter what. And all of that is to commemorate Rabbi Akiva's students. So we learn here that it's in some ways a time of mourning. Not to the same extent that you would mourn around Tisha B'Av when the temple was destroyed, or to the same extent as when a close family member passes away. But nonetheless, a time of a little bit of mourning, a little bit of sorrow. But the Shulchan Aruch goes on to say that on Lag BaOmer, the 33rd day of the Omer, you actually can have these celebrations. So in the modern state of Israel, this is a time of having big parties. You often have a big bonfire. Children often get their very first haircut on Lag BaOmer because it's when you can cut hair again. And so you have this big celebration because this is the day that the tradition teaches Rabbi Akiva's students stopped dying. This is the day when things actually became a little bit better. So I think in general, counting the Omer teaches us a lot about hope. And I think actually going back to those agricultural beginnings can give us some insight into how this might be a time of great joy and great sorrow. So during the harvest period, it would be a time when you're bringing in a lot of bounty and you're really celebrating what the land is giving you. And at the same time, it would be a time period with a lot of fear, right? You wouldn't know whether your harvest was going to be good enough to sustain you, to give you a livelihood, until the very end of that harvest, right around Shavuot. So I think that this time period was one of a bit of tension, right? Is it going to be good? Is it going to be bad? You wouldn't really know. And I like to imagine the Israelites wandering through the desert, being filled with hope that they were going to be given the Torah, but not really knowing what their lives were going to be like next, right? They wouldn't know what laws they were going to receive. They wouldn't know what wisdom they were going to receive. So every year in the Jewish calendar, we recreate the exodus from Egypt, and we recreate receiving the Torah. And we count the Omer as the time period all the way in between. I think for us, now more than ever, we're thinking about what does it mean to have hope in times of difficulty. So I think back to Rabbi Akiva and what it would have meant to lose all of your students to a terrible plague. And I think about us losing friends and dear loved ones to this horrible coronavirus, and what it means to still have hope that soon we're going to receive the Torah. So the end of that story, right, is that Rabbi Akiva, after losing his students, after going through this devastation, goes on to find new students and find new ways of teaching Torah. I think for all of us, we are mourning not just the loss of friends and family. We're also mourning the loss of how our lives used to be when we had a lot of freedom. And I think what I'm hoping for during this Omer period is that we can hold on to that hope that just as the Israelites, even though they suffered in the wilderness, gained great wisdom and gained a lot of Torah, a lot of good learning, we too can gain new wisdom during this Omer period. And we can hold on to that hope that we'll get to see our friends' faces again, right? So Maimonides describes counting down the days. And we don't know how long things are going to be difficult like this. But I want us to hold on to that hope of what it will be like to gain new wisdom and new learning, and also what it will be like to see our friends' faces again, and to be able to greet our loved ones and see them face to face and give them a hug. So I want you all to know that I am looking forward to when I can see my loved ones and when you can see each other and maybe when I can see all of you again. And please, if there's ever anything that you would like to talk about, please don't hesitate to call the rabbi's office. We would love to talk to you both about the Omer or the Torah portion of the week, the Parshat HaShavua, or just anything that's on your mind. Have a good day.